In a small, forgotten corner of the city, there was an antique shop that few people ever seemed to notice. The windows were dusty, the sign barely visible, and the interior smelled of old wood and time-worn memories. But for Clara, on that particular evening, something about the place called to her. It was as if the shop had been waiting for her. As she stepped through the door, the bell above it chimed softly. The air was thick with the scent of aged leather and decay. Clara's eyes drifted across the shelves, filled with oddities, books with tattered pages, tarnished silverware, and strange trinkets. But there was one thing that caught her attention immediately, a portrait, hanging crookedly on the far wall. It was of a man, dressed in 18th century clothing, his face solemn and pale. His dark eyes seemed to watch Clara, and despite the stillness of the painting, something about him felt alive. She couldn't look away. An old man, the shopkeeper, appeared from behind a stack of old crates. His gray beard twitched as he noticed Clara's gaze fixed on the painting. "Ah, that one," he said softly, his voice as cracked as the floorboards beneath them. "Been here for years, that painting. No one knows who he is, or where it came from. But people say strange things happen around it." Clara raised an eyebrow. "What kind of strange things?" The shopkeeper hesitated, as if considering whether he should speak. "Well, some say they've seen the man's eyes follow them. Others claim they hear whispers when they stand too close. There's a rumor, though, that every year, on the same night, the portrait changes." Clara laughed, though it was a nervous sound. "You're telling me it moves?" The old man gave a thin, cryptic smile. "That's not what I said. I said it changes. Some believe that if you stare long enough, the man will speak to you." The words lingered in the air, their meaning heavier than they should have been. Clara shook her head, unsure whether the man was just telling tales to pass the time. But there was something undeniably strange about the painting, something that tugged at her curiosity. She decided to stay. The night wore on, the shop growing quieter as the hours slipped by. The flickering light of the single candle cast long shadows across the room, and Clara couldn't help but find herself drawn back to the portrait. She'd told herself it was just a painting, that there was nothing to fear. But as the night deepened, the room seemed to grow colder, the air thicker. And then, just as the clock struck midnight, it happened. Clara's gaze locked with the man's eyes, and for the first time, they didn't feel still. They moved. Slowly, unnervingly, his eyes blinked. Her heart raced. It couldn't be real, could it? She stepped closer to the painting, her breath catching in her throat. The man's face. It seemed to shift, just slightly. His lips parted, as if about to speak. A chill ran down Clara's spine. She backed away, but her eyes were drawn to the painting once more. The man's hand lifted in the frame, his finger pointing directly at her. A low whisper, faint but unmistakable, filled the room. "Help me." Clara froze. The world seemed to tilt. The shadows in the room grew longer, stretching out of proportion, as though the painting itself was reaching beyond its frame. The air was thick, and the walls seemed to pulse with a strange energy. She reached out toward the painting, drawn to it against her will. Her fingertips brushed the wooden frame. Suddenly, the room darkened entirely. The shop, the shelves, the clutter, everything vanished. Clara found herself in a dark, empty space, with only the portrait's figure before her. But now, the man wasn't confined to the canvas. He stepped out, his form solid and chillingly real, his features sharp and distant. He took a slow, deliberate step toward her. His eyes gleamed with something: anger? Desperation? A little of both. "I've been waiting," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "Waiting for someone to release me." Clara stumbled back, panic rising in her chest. "Release you?" she whispered, barely able to breathe. "What do you mean?" He took another step closer, his cold hand reaching toward her. "The portrait. It traps me. You must help me break free." But before Clara could react, the shopkeeper appeared out of nowhere, standing between them. His eyes were somber, filled with a strange knowing. "No one escapes," he said quietly. "The painting chooses its own keeper. And now, it's your turn." The room suddenly spun back to reality, the cluttered antique shop reappearing around them. Clara gasped, her heart hammering in her chest. The painting was back on the wall, still and silent as ever, the man's eyes cold and lifeless. The shopkeeper's voice broke through her shock. "The portrait will wait. It always does. Every year, it chooses someone new to guard it." Clara felt a chill run down her spine. "Guard it?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. The shopkeeper nodded. "You're its protector now. It won't let you leave." Clara stumbled toward the door, her mind racing with questions. She could still feel the weight of the man's gaze on her as she left, but when she stepped outside into the cool night air, she thought she could finally breathe again. But as she walked down the empty street, she couldn't shake the feeling that the portrait was still watching her, waiting for the right moment to choose its next keeper.